Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde, and I am joined alongside a very special guest and good friend, Greg Bragg from CHGO. Greg, welcome to the show. Very excited to have you on.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and we are going to talk Bears football today, folks. You know, as you know, crazy offseason for everybody. If you've been following Greg, him and I have both been tweeting about it on our respective accounts. That's how we got to know each other a little bit. And Greg, just want to kick things off. Ryan Poles was absolutely cooking this offseason, as well as the rest of the players. So last year, not ideal at 3-14, but worked out because we got the number one overall pick, which then ended up becoming DJ Moore and a boatload of more picks. And then on top of it, we got rid of Roquan, Robert Quinn, and a lot of our Pro Bowl players that we knew for the last couple of years ended up turning out to be some great players too. Javon Dexter Sr., Tyreek Stevenson, all the free agents we signed and all the draft picks. Out of all of that, there's a ton. But from the 1 year so far, what did you see from this team that changed from year one to year two? And what is your favorite move so far?
My favorite move is probably the Roquan Smith trade. My guy Lou Medina from Bleacher Nation Bears. I think he really laid it out pretty nicely in a recent article where it showed the return you got for Roquan. I mean, it takes balls if you're Ryan Poles to make a move like that. He's one of your franchise players that you know is productive. And he's younger. You know, it's easy to get rid of Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack to an extent because they're aging veterans. You flip their contracts. But with Roquan, you had a decision to make. Pay him or cut your ties and try to get draft equity in return. So, you know, for him to make that move, you still get a premier middle linebacker in Tremaine Edmonds. Now you also add TJ Edwards for basically the same price as Roquan Smith.
Exactly.
And now you've set yourself, as you mentioned, Javon Dexter is also within that deal with the draft pick you got in that trade. And it also, you know, as Lou mentioned in his article, it set you up for the opportunity to have a high draft pick. And not only was it high, it was the number one pick in the draft, which they then flipped for DJ Moore, a future first round pick, a future second round pick. And, you know, Darnell Wright turns into the number, 11 pick in the draft. So you put it all together for what they did to make that move for Roquan Smith. That was Ryan Poles attacking at the very right moment, a crucial moment that we'll look back in a few years, hopefully, and say that was the cornerstone moment for Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears, because it just laid everything out for the future.
And going off of that, so you raised some really good points. You know, Darnell Wright, originally we did not get the 11th pick from the Carolina Panthers. We had the number 9 overall pick, and we ended up flipping that with the Eagles and getting
10, right? It went from 9 to 10. Yeah, I apologize. Get my numbers.
No, my mistake too. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so we could have gotten Jalen Carter. Obviously, the Eagles traded up with the Bears and got him. So kind of looking back on it now, the Bears went out and got 3 defensive linemen in this draft. We also went out and got a few key free agents. My favorite, DeMarcus Walker, out of the free agency group that we picked up. Again, a very strong group. But Jalen Carter was a hot topic because, you know, his draft stock dropped significantly because of, you know, the street racing and the unfortunate accident with his teammate. Were you, before we found out what the Eagles have been dealing with so far this offseason with Jalen Carter, did you want him instead of Darnell Wright? Are you happy with the Darnell Wright move? Like, what would you have done if you were Ryan Poles in that situation?
I'm not going to lie. When the whole conversation all the way leading up to the draft, I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't very interested in Jalen Carter. Initially, no one ever thought he would fall to 9. No one ever thought that would be a possibility. Then when it became abundantly clear it was a real possibility, I was like, why not? You're getting the best of both worlds where you trade back. We all thought, trade back to 2, trade back to 4 to stay in that Jalen Carter range. And instead you trade back to 9 and he's still there. And I was like, man, you know, that's like God's gift, right? And you don't want to sell short the tragedy that he was involved in. And he holds a lot of responsibility to that. But at the same time, I think a lot of fans wanted to write him off for that mistake, and I wasn't one of them. I was once an 18-year-old kid that made a lot of bad decisions, and I'm not going to define a person by their worst mistake. I'm going to, especially a young kid like that that's going to mature and grow up, you hope. And obviously there's a risk attached to it, but he has a lot of talent for, you know, there's no denying that. So I probably would have taken the risk when you talk about the offensive linemen, I'm excited for Darnell Wright now that he's in house. But we were looking at Paris Johnson. A lot of Bears fans were sour on Peter Skoronski. I was included. But all these names are getting thrown around. But when you talk about Darnell Wright, they're saying he's a right tackle. He's not a left tackle. And I was like, man, if I'm going to draft a tackle in the top 10, I want it to be like Penei Sewell or, some of these other premier left tackles we see around the league that get taken in the top 10. Very rarely do you see a premier right tackle being taken in the top 10. It does happen. And now that they've taken Darnell Wright, I'm excited to see him at camp. I would like to see him become a top 5 right tackle in this league, and that'll justify that move. And I totally trust Ryan Poles to take Darnell Wright over Jalen Carter. So let's roll and see him protect Justin Fields, because we all know after last year, they needed that more than anything. So that's what Ryan Poles did. He did the mature thing, the right thing to do for the Bears. I would have taken some wild card, swing of the bat, but it's not when it's not your job on the line, you can talk a big game about what you would do. You have to understand Ryan Poles playing it safe at this point in the Bears rebuild.
Did you just make your pitch for GM eventually when Ryan Poles becomes president?
No. I mean, I think every Bears Twitter GM analyst wanted Deshaun Watson over Mitch Trubisky. So we all got that right on Bears Twitter. But aside from that, I would have many misses because I'm always looking for skill guys that I'm probably reaching for. So I'd probably be more like Ryan Pace, where I'm constantly reaching for skill position guys when I should be getting the meat and potatoes and being, looking for the foundational pieces. But that's no fun. I want the Ferrari. I'm not looking for the dump truck that's going to get the job done. I want the hot rod car, but then you never know what's underneath the hood.
Exactly. I mean, listen, I was an advocate for Ryan Pace because he was so good at late round picks. Tyreek Cohen, Eddie Jackson. He hit on Roquan, but then he swung and a miss on Mitch, which I don't blame Mitch fully, by the way. I think a lot of it was Nagy. Mitch did have his flaws, obviously, but then Pace also was a terrible contract guy. The Khalil Mack contract was absolutely horrible. It just ruined us for years. Yep. And, Poles fixed it. But we're not going to go down that road right now. We're here to talk about the future. We're here to talk about the now. So, going back to your comments about Darnell Wright, I was excited about it too. And yes, you usually don't draft a right tackle in the first round, at least until the second half of the first round. I mean, Darnell Wright, I think, could have been there at least for another 5 picks. I think Ryan Poles could have traded back 1 or 2 more times, just to gain a little bit more draft capital. But you don't want to go to the fountain too much. You want to, you were comfortable. You wanted your guy. Right tackle was super needed for the Bears. So, Darnell Wright, I'm excited about it. But going to that left tackle position, we do have Braxton Jones, another late round guy, 5th round in Ryan Poles' first draft. Are you confident in Braxton Jones? How are you feeling about him? In my personal opinion, I think he did fantastic last year for being a rookie on a horrible offensive line with no help and going against guys like Nick Bosa. Right. He went against Watt. He went against a couple other big name defensive linemen. And I believe he only gave up 5 or 6 sacks last year, at least in the second half, which again, for a rookie, not bad. So how confident are you in Braxton Jones? And would you have gone with a left tackle if you were Ryan Poles in that position?
I mean, the left tackle really wasn't there, right? I mean, nobody really wanted Peter Skoronski. The arm length was a big topic of conversation. Paris Johnson Jr., who, I guess you could have played on either side of the ball, had all this potential, and rightfully so. He gets taken even higher than anyone thought going into the draft. So I don't know if that option really was there realistically. So, and also they are high on Paris Johnson. I'm worried that I just want to see it work out. Are we entering the Charles Leno era with Braxton Jones? Is his best availability?
Don't put that juju on us.
Well, and
I know you're just being real.
Right. And, just when you look at Charles Leno from where he was drafted, late round pick, and he played every season. Now we all know that he got beat at times, and there was a lot of Bears fans that, he drew a lot of their ire from, the mistakes he made. But that being said, he was out there every week. I mean, Tevin Jenkins is the most, talented offensive lineman, on this team. He was last year, certainly, but he has back issues. Kyle Long, one of the most talented offensive linemen. We've missed on so many offensive linemen in first round. Kyle Long was the only one that didn't, but he couldn't stay healthy either. So, while Gabe Karimi was a bust, I'm not going to call Kyle Long a bust, but when it doesn't work out because he can't stay on the field, what's the difference? You're not going to win.
I agree.
So, Braxton Jones being able to play every week last year, that's huge, especially from a 5th round left tackle. Can he theoretically get better? Yes. Does that guarantee it? I think that's something fans, trick themselves into at times is, well, you're just going to get better and better and better. I got fooled into this growing up as a kid because that's what Michael Jordan did. Every year he just got better until he was the greatest player of all time. Not every player's trajectory is that. Sometimes a player tops out, and this is as good as he's going to be. So that's the question with Braxton Jones. Is last year as good as he's going to be, or is there another level to his game? And we're going to find that out. He knows his limitations. Can he overcome those? Can he get stronger? The reason I worry a little bit is because the people that know more about the game than I do, a guy like Corey Wooten, who's a part of our CHGO team, he's got his concerns about Braxton Jones that he's vocalized. We had Steven Edwards on, who was an offensive lineman in the mid-2000s for the Bears. He has his concerns. These are guys that played the position that aren't afraid to vocalize their concerns on it. Doesn't mean he's not going to work out. It just means it's not a guarantee as of yet. Now, he's still going to be out. He's dependable. I think he's checked that off the list. But is he someone that is going to keep Justin Fields upright at all times? He's still got to prove that.
Absolutely. I mean, again, last season, there were so many different situations, against San Francisco, against Bosa, for example, no one could get their cleats in the turf anyway. So kind of like that. And I agree. I mean, there's definitely room to grow. I mean, he definitely had his struggles last year. If Fields didn't have wheels, he probably would have given up twice as many sacks. That's just how it is.
56 sacks for Fields, and it could have easily been like 98.
100%. That line was that. I mean, Sam Mustipher, I don't hold back on Sam Mustipher. I was so disappointed in him, unfortunately. But a lot of it came up the middle. As bad as that sounds, when linebackers are sacking a quarterback. But you're talking about limitations. Last year, the offense was limited because Fields had practically nothing to work with. Darnell Mooney was hurt later in the season. Dante Pettis was his most consistent wide receiver. Cole Kmet had that 3-game streak that was unbelievable, but he had no offensive line, and his running backs, because Justin Fields could run, everyone was like, okay, we have to consider Fields and the running backs. So his running backs were doing a lot of work. And that's just my opinion. Yep. But they were helping spread the offense overall, but it wasn't helping as a whole. It was not a good situation to be good at when everyone's rushing really well. Right. And, this upcoming season, you bring in DJ Moore. Chase Claypool has a whole offseason with the playbook. You draft Tyler Scott. Velus Jones Jr. looks tougher. You bring in Robert Tonyan, Nate Davis. The offense is going to be a lot better. The limitations aren't there. But from your perspective, Greg, what are you seeing for the offense next year? It's only up from last year. That's just the obvious. But what are you seeing out of this offense in this upcoming season?
Well, it's money on the table time for Luke Getsy. Everybody wants to talk about it's Justin Fields' turn to step up. And there's no question. That's obvious. But not as many people are putting that equal amount of pressure or talk around Luke Getsy. He has the pieces now to put together a respectable offense. So when you have Justin Fields, a guy that can make plays, a running game that last year set the all-time rushing record in a single season in Chicago Bears history. So you have that in your back pocket. Be responsible with that. Use that, play off of that, play action. I mean, look at the San Francisco 49ers. They just change out quarterbacks. Trey Lance gets hurt week 1. Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt. They bring in Brock Purdy, the last pick in the draft. He comes in. He looks like an MVP candidate. Why? Because of the system they run. And if Luke Getsy ever wants to be a head coach in this league, that's what he has to turn this into. Look at how they use Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Their offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, it's the same thing. They have a system they run. Tyler Huntley can come in, and they're still productive. So that's what this has to be. It's Luke Getsy's turn to make these weapons get the most out of every weapon you now have on this team. DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, a hopefully healthy Darnell Mooney, reignite Velus Jones into the role that he should be, a 5th or 6th option on your wide receiver depth chart. You've got a young wide receiver in Tyler Scott that can stretch the defense. So now you have some options underneath, or Tyler Scott blows the top off of it. So you've got options here now, and it's money on the table time for Luke Getsy to put it all together.
I agree. I mean, Robert Tonyan had a career year under Luke Getsy with those 11 receptions in 2020. I know it was COVID ball, but still, very impressive. Football's football at the end of the day. You saw flashes of Luke Getsy, and, I liked at the end of the year presser that, Matt Eberflus came out and said, we didn't do as much as we could because, everyone was kind of learning everything. And, Chase Claypool comes in week 8, was it? And, you can't really do much with, a guy who has a ton of potential, just an absolute natural athlete. Cole Kmet went on that hot streak. You saw what the offense could be. I agree. I mean, out of Alan Williams and Luke Getsy, I think Luke Getsy's seat is a little bit warmer. A lot of people are still questioning the defensive line. I think they're going to do better this year. But the offense, I mean, you have every weapon that you need there, and you have depth on top of it. I mean, you have a good wide receiver core. You have a good tight end core. Some of your linemen, your starting 5 linemen are looking pretty darn good out of the gate, at least on paper. I'm with you, Greg. I mean, I hope Luke Getsy comes out just absolutely swinging week 1 against the Packers. I mean, as he should.
Well, how many weeks last year did it take him to adjust, right? They were pretty stubborn to start last year, trying to run the offense that Luke Getsy wanted to install, but they didn't have the pieces to install it. Now, I'll give Luke Getsy credit. Once they got to the Patriots game, they said, enough's enough. We're going to change this offense because we're not doing anything with what we're trying to do. And then all of a sudden, Bears put up 30 points a game for a month and a half. And it was some of the most exciting offensive football we've ever seen in this city. So you give them credit there, but at the same time, it's a punch counter punch league in football. In all sports it is, but specifically football. So they know what you're trying to do now going into this year. They saw what you ran all the second half of last year, and when Justin Fields got hot, you can come out the gates with a certain game plan, but you got to be ready to counter punch. And now you have the pieces to have that ability to do that. Last year, maybe you have one hand tied behind your back while you're trying to count. It's not easy to box when you got one hand tied behind your back. Now you've got 2 hands. So the excuses are drying up. You could still say, the offensive line is young, or chemistry with the wide receivers, and you can try to make up all the excuses you possibly can. But at the same time, I think they have a high expectation for themselves, and the fans their expectation level is rising, and you're going to have to try to meet that to a certain extent.
I believe I heard that opening week against Green Bay, I mean, it would have been expensive anyway, but isn't it the most expensive tickets after a team got the number 1 overall pick? I think opening day wise,
it wouldn't surprise me.
That was some stat that I saw. Like the average ticket was going for over $450, and never has that. I mean, inflation, obviously, whatever, but no one has ever been like, hey, I want to go spend $500 on a ticket to go see a team that just came in last place.
The oldest rivalry in football. You got that. Aaron Rodgers is no longer on the Packers, so Bears fans, whereas before you might say, I'm going to skip this because I'm sick of Aaron Rodgers, smeared it in our faces, which I've been at those games. I was at the game. He yelled in the crowd, I own you. It's not fun to spend your hard-earned money to have Aaron Rodgers laugh in your face. But now he's gone, so that's another reason why you'd want to go as a Bears fan. It's week 1, so everybody's hyped. You always want to go to opening day. Bears have the smallest capacity stadium. That's another part of the equation. It's a premium ticket because we all can't get in there. It's not like Jerry World down in Dallas, 120,000 fans. It's almost half that. So, those are all part of the equation there. So if it were me, I don't go to the games as much anymore because we're in studio, but I'd probably just let that one go. I mean, the most expensive ticket I ever saw was when Tom Brady came here with the Patriots, his last season with the Patriots against the Bears.
The Kevin White game.
The Kevin White game. I went to every home game that year but that one because the tickets were just absolutely outrageous. This is a regular season game. to put playoff type money, because that's how much playoff tickets. What the Bears Packers game is going for this week is how much a playoff ticket at times can cost. So I would caution Bears fans, unless you got good money, I'd save it for a game down the road. You'll have just as fun.
Yeah, I will. I know that, Greg, I told you about it. We're having our big viewing party at Murphy's Bleachers week 4 against the Broncos. So Would love to potentially see you there if you can make it. Same with the crew. But I was thinking about going to that game. I was like, you know what? The viewing party seems perfect for that. Denver, a lot of Chicago fans in Chicago, but also I'm for sure going to Raiders Bears at Soldier Field, because I would love to do it in Las Vegas, obviously, but tickets weren't that bad. You're still middle of October. You don't know what this team is doing. But like you kind of said, it's, the smallest stadium in the NFL. And just quickly want to put out there is that actually the Bears are going to have more included in their suites than the new Bills Stadium, which I think makes absolutely no sense why Buffalo is downsizing their stadium. And it's open too. It's not even a dome. Right. I'm not sure if you saw this, but I was blown away. I was like, you're losing 15,000 seats because why?
Yeah, they're staying true to themselves out there in Buffalo, because remember they lost a home game last year because of the blizzard they had. They had to play one home game in, I think it was Cincinnati or wherever.
Was it Cincinnati or Detroit?
Yeah, Detroit. You're right. They had them go all the way to Detroit. They lost a home game. That's a lot of money. And they were like, nope, we're still doing an open air stadium. Hey, more power to them. I love Soldier Field. I'm not one of those people that hates it. I'd be fine if they wanted to stay there. But when they move to Arlington Heights, you won't hear complaint out of me. I'm looking forward to the move to Arlington Heights.
I just moved right out. I mean, I live right. Like I can see the demolition from like my window. Like that's how close I am.
So you're saying I have parking availability in 15 years when they finally do build that.
Well, if I'm still leasing here, yeah, but the plan is to
you'll be married with kids by the time that stadium gets built, my friend.
But I will still make sure that everyone can park on my driveway. Yes. I'll have the big backyard. You name it. No, we don't even have to go in.
We'll be there.
Oh, absolutely. We'll be having a show beforehand. But let's go back into this team a little bit. Kind of going to the defensive side real quick. Yep. I think this defense is going to shock a lot of people. I mean, the improvements have been tremendous. You still have the same secondary with more talent. You have a completely new linebacker core minus Sanborn, which you have the two best coverage linebackers in the NFL, or top 10 best duo of coverage linebackers, but 2 top 10 coverage linebackers in TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. Sanborn, looks like he's explosive. We're not really sure exactly what he can do, but in 6 starts, 70 tackles, pretty darn good. Yep. And an interception that got overturned, which was BS. I was at that game. That was BS. And then, Justin Jones, is the leader of the defensive line, in my personal opinion. You have a ton of young talent with Pickens and Dexter Sr. You have Billings, who broke every college, high school record for strength, I guess. I learned that a couple weeks ago. And then DeMarcus Walker, who's a 7-sack guy, and Rasheem Green, who was a 7-sack guy. And then Travis Gibson as well. I mean, there's a ton of talent there. And apparently there's the rumors of the Bears going out and still calling people up. I want Justin Houston. That's my personal opinion. But, sure. What are you feeling about the defense? Is it a top 10 defense? Like, are they going to shock a lot of people? The defensive line, like, what are you thinking overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think outside of Justin Fields last year, I thought the second biggest bright spot to this team was the secondary. I thought 100%. They battled their asses off last year. When you consider that the Bears defensive line had a franchise record worst sack total. They had 18 sacks as a team last year, led by Jaquan Brisker, a safety, but only 10 sacks from the defensive line. That is an all-time Chicago Bears low in a single season, in a storied history of good defensive
monsters
line.
Of the midway.
Right. No monsters of the midway last year. And then you back that up to the linebacking core last year. Roquan Smith for the first half of the season. He's always productive, but certainly distracted last year. Did he put out his best performance while he was still a Bear? I wouldn't necessarily say so. Jack Sanborn comes in to replace him, and he's like running around like his hair is on fire. So I think you're always going to get that effort out of Jack, even if there's any limitations to his athletic ability. So now you bring in, like you said, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds to go with Jack Sanborn and Noah Sewell, who, oh, by the way, was also part of that whole trade package when they let go of Roquan Smith. He's also included in that whole thing. So, it just speaks to how smart Ryan Poles was to flip that, because now you have depth at linebacker. You have decent depth, some things that still need to be proved in that secondary, but they proved last year how much they'll battle their asses off with no pass rush, with no really a non-existent linebacking core. Now you add some pieces. Now you talk about the defensive line guys. I think all of those guys, there's a chance one or two of them might surprise, and they certainly are rotational pieces. Are any of them game changers, game wreckers? I don't know if we necessarily have one of those yet. Now, can they find somebody on the free agent market or somebody that gets a surprise cut from a team? I hope so, because I'd like them to bring in another edge rusher, as most Bears fans do. But I'm with you that I think they'll surprise, because if they can battle last year and give teams like the Eagles a hard time, I know it was freezing that day, and give different teams – where the Bears they were in games all of last year. And that wasn't just, it was mostly Justin Fields, but it was also because the defense was able to hold on for dear life at times. And then they'd ultimately let go of the rope in the fourth quarter because of lack of depth. Now you have some depth. So, I'm excited for that. I think this secondary is a force. That's something you can build off of. And you have a linebacking core that is a force. I think it was Pro Football Focus or one of those that ranked him number 2 as a group, linebacking group behind the San Francisco 49ers. That's good company to be in. So now you have this pass rush that still is a work in progress. Gervon Dexter, people are excited for him. And let's let the rookies develop on their own time. I don't want to set too high a bar of expectation on them just yet. But they will develop. I'm excited to see that. And, that's the thing. I think Matt Eberflus showed an ability to develop the guys that they did have that were going to be mainstay players. If you watch Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker as the year went on, they were getting burned early in the season. You remember Jaquan Brisker on those QB bootlegs against the New York Giants? He's stuck on an island. I'm not going to say it was necessarily all his fault. You can put that on Alan Williams for not adjusting. But as the season went on, he's becoming more of a force. Kyler Gordon, they would go after him every time on a crucial third down, put him in the slot, a little quick slant, and they'd eat him alive. By the end of the year, Kyler Gordon started to get very physical, started to get into some, passing lanes, intercept the ball a couple times. So now you get that. You bring in Tyreek Stevenson, Eddie Jackson, who I thought really showed leadership last year with the coaching 100%. Stage and bought in to this hits philosophy, a guy that Bears fans love to joke that he's not willing to put his head down and make a tackle. He made plenty of tackles last year. So if you can only get this guy a pass rush, he'll go back to the guy that was picking off footballs and taking them to the house the other way and doing whatever touchdown celebration he's got geared up. So you add all that together, and I think that this defense, I'm with you. I think they'll surprise, but to what level? I think we they're going to compete, but there's going to be times they're going to give up points too. This is still a work in progress. I'm excited for the season, and we all are going to have raised expectations, but there's got to be a middle ground here. It's okay to set your bar high as a fan with your expectations, but try to keep it a little bit realistic or you might get burned.
And I just I agree with everything that you're saying. I do set a high standard, optimistic sport podcast. That's what we call ourselves. Sure. But, you got to be real at the same time. And one thing that you called out was Eddie Jackson's play. Eddie Jackson only played in 13 games last year because he was forced to only play in 13 games because of an injury. That guy was on pace to have 100+ tackles. He was on pace to have 6 interceptions if he kept it up. And he didn't take one to the house, but he did on a penalty, and it got called back twice.
And he's had about 7 of those in his career.
Exactly, because someone's got something against Eddie Jackson. But guess what? He is a fantastic safety, and he did not work in Chuck Pagano's defense because that's not the player Eddie Jackson was. Alan Williams is a defensive back overall friendly corner. He led the number 2 defensive backs in Indianapolis with Matt Eberflus as the defensive coordinator.
Yep.
So that's why they were able to progress so quickly. And that's why I'm very excited about that group too. And I think Eddie Jackson did a great job, a lot of distractions, a lot of pressure. And everyone was like, is he getting traded? He's not Ryan Poles' guy. He's Ryan Pace's guy.
Right.
And you know what? He stepped up to the plate and said, I'm here to play football for the Chicago Bears. And a lot of people are like, oh, he got the bag and he was done. No, because he played in the wrong defense. Now he's doing absolutely what Eddie Jackson is known for doing. I think he's going to have a huge year. I think he could be a Pro Bowler again next year.
Completely agree. And you have Jaquan Brisker on the other side, who led the team in sacks, which isn't a great stat if you're trying to get production from your D-line, but it speaks to how good Jaquan Brisker is and how they have different ways to dial up a blitz and put pressure on the quarterback. Send some linebackers, send Jaquan Brisker, and that's going to put guys like Eddie Jackson and some of these cornerbacks in a position to make plays on the football if the defensive line is still a work in progress. So we'll just have to wait and see.
I'm excited about it though. But, Greg, obviously I did not get the award for keeping it under 30 minutes.
I told you, I warned you. You weren't going to keep it under 30 minutes with me. That's okay. It's close. I respect
it's close.
I respect the attempt, but it's hard to hold me down. I'm a rambler. I'm a rambling man. So
I think I joined you. It's been a great conversation. It's been a great conversation. I can't wait for everybody to see this episode because it's been a lot of fun. But final question of the day, and I again we'll have to do this plenty of times more.
Absolutely.
You come back on the show, bring the whole crew on. We'll make it work.
Anytime.
But last question, and I've been asking everybody this. I even asked Jervon Dexter this, and he said, "Watch out." What are your predictions record-wise for the Chicago Bears? Expectations just over from an offense? I know we kind of talked about it, but how high is the bar for you right now for the defense, for the coaches? And what is your record prediction for the 2023-2024 Chicago Bears?
Well, I said it today on our CHGO Bears show. We had Zach Pearson from the Bear Report on, and I've been kind of hinting at it. And we haven't even gotten a defensive end yet, but I'm going to put my win total at 9 this year.
Okay.
I had considered 10. The meatball in me wants to go for the double digits. And I'm trying to, this is as much as I'm going to leverage myself down to realism, is going down to 9. I'm not going to go down to 8 because I just think that's hedging and that's a coward's game. I'm going to stick with 9. We're going to win 9 games, exactly what the Lions did last year. Be right there in the thick of the division hunt. The division is not as good as it was last year. But I think this team has a really good chance to surprise you. Make all these additions. They have an energy. You keep hearing about the vibes, right? And in 2018, when you went to Bourbonnais, they had those vibes. You could see it at camp. A team that was excited to get out there and play and work and come together as friends and a team like that chemistry you need to compete in the NFL, along with talent. They have both. I feel like the chemistry is building. They have the talent there. And then the other aspect I think in Chicago that helps is while we as Bears fans have high expectations, I think overall expectations for this team are still low. So they don't have this Super Bowl or bust, hanging over their head that never does them any good, like we saw in 2019 with the Bears, where they fell flat on their face by drinking way too much Kool-Aid. This team is hungry to prove people wrong. Justin Fields is hungry to prove people wrong. Matt Eberflus is getting ranked the worst coach in football. That's the kind of, I like that. That's a perfect storm for Chicago sports teams, specifically the Bears. Get in that. Everyone doubts us. We're talented. Let's go kick the Packers right in the mouth, and away we go. But I'm going to put 9 wins on the season, and I'm going to hold to that all the way through training camp. So I'm not going to come off this number. So you heard it here, 9 wins.
I appreciate you announcing that here. I am very happy about that. So I agree with you that they're going to win more than 8 games, and the meatball in me is saying 10. And the reason why I'm saying 10 is because, like you said, the division is anyone's division. I mean, I see us winning both against the Vikings. The Vikings are they got rid of everybody except Justin Jefferson. And, our entire secondary has no one to worry about now minus him. And sure, you could put, their tight end in there, and you could but their running back, Dalvin Cook's gone. Their offensive line's old. And there's no one else there. Their defense has declined significantly. Kirk Cousins is still Kirk Cousins. You go over to Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is gone. They're just not going to be the Green Bay Packers anymore. That's just what it is. That he kept that team together for so long. You go to the Lions. They have the vibes. They're guys that like to play with each other, but their running back room, questionable. Even though David Montgomery's over there, Montgomery's already
shots
hurt.
Fired at Demo. That's okay,
but he's already hurt.
I always shoot shots at Demo. If you watch our shows, I was always the guy that was down. I respect David Montgomery's game, but I think Bears fans overhyped him.
Now that he left and I look at his stats from a realistic standpoint, I'm like, he was fine. He did what he had to do. If it was between him and Jordan Howard, I would do Jordan Howard. I thought Jordan Howard was a harder runner. Like, he got more stuff done with what he was given. We can go down that road another time. But, the Lions, I don't see. I see them being another 9-8 team.
Well,
I don't see where they got better.
They're in danger of is the expectations. This is a team that hasn't won a division since 1991, or not a playoff game since 1991, and in a division since 1993 or something. So they have these. Fine. You want to put those expectations on? Maybe it's deserved. They had a good finish to their season last year, but at the same time, sometimes expectations can kill a team. So how hard got a bunch of players suspended from gambling and coaches. So I'm not saying that's going to completely fracture the locker room, but not everybody's focused in there, and I'm not going to say I completely agree with suspending guys the way they do for gambling, with how much it's integrated into the NFL and all of sports now. But at the same time, rules are rules, and they didn't follow them. And now Jameson Williams, they drafted him. He's barely played for them, and now he's suspended another 6 to 8 games or whatever it is. So expectations, they play the Chiefs week 1. That's a loss. So you can potentially see where the Bears are 1-0 and the Lions are 0-1 to start the year. So that's what I mean. You can play the game of, this team looks like that and everything. It's not who you play. It's when you play them. And we don't know what these teams are going to look like down the road, but playing the Packers week 1 before they really know who Jordan Love is, that's a good thing. It's at Soldier Field. Playing the Buccaneers week 3, a team that just lost Tom Brady, great. Bring them on early. Let's want to check that off the road game box, or is that week 2? Either way, those are winnable games right out the gate where you can get a winning record as you go into October. And then the other aspect of when you play teams, we have 2 or 3 Thursday night games this season. So 2
as of right now,
2 Thursday night games and a bye week. So you have 3 weeks where your next opponent is on an extended break. Yes, they have 2 short weeks, but in those 2 short weeks, you're playing Washington, who's a winnable game, and then who's the other Thursday night game? The Carolina Panthers, a winnable game. So while Thursday night games are not fun, we got, at least it wasn't the Chiefs on a short week. It's the Panthers and Washington Commanders. So winnable games, not a guarantee. And now you have an extended break before you play your next team. I think the schedule lines up for them nicely. They have a bunch of home games at the end of the year after their bye. I thought the bye was in a perfect spot when you consider the Thursday night games. And we play Green Bay week 1 and then the final week of the season when Green Bay is going to be trying to lose for a draft pick so they can get a quarterback. So to me, that's, you add all that together, and I think the Bears are in a really good spot this season.
Third easiest schedule too. On our calendar, the only team that I see the Bears really not having a shot against is the Chiefs. And who knows? Why not the Bears? Why not? You never know.
Because Patrick Mahomes. I know a lot of Bears fans were like, I'm going to Kansas City for the barbecue and we're going to beat the Chiefs. You're going to eat the barbecue and then you're going to eat a loss like Jameson Winston eating his fingers. If it happens, I'm happy for you to run this clip back and poke fun at me on Twitter, but I'm not taking the Bears over the Chiefs. It ain't happening, brother. All the young quarterbacks that have tried to take down the king of the NFL, he always lets them know. Patrick Mahomes, the ultimate competitor. I'm sure it'll be a great game where Fields and Mahomes going back and forth at each other, but I'm not picking against Patrick Mahomes just yet.
Hey, you know what?
I'll take it. I'm not going to fight it, but if we're putting our hard-earned money on it, I'd probably pick a different road game to go to. Go to Tampa. beautiful, beautiful state of Florida, and you'll get a W along the way.
Hey, I'm about that. Eventually a summer home will be down there, or a winter home will be down there eventually. Hope that's the 40-year goal, but we'll see. But Greg, we kept it under 40 technically before I closed out. So it was a good show. But can't thank you enough for coming on. Bears fans love you. We loved having you come on. We can't wait to do it again. But, we'll have to do a mid-season check-in to see how our thoughts were going out so far. We'll replay some clips maybe. But Greg, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Anytime you need me. Appreciate you having me. Hard to follow up Javon Dexter, but nice work on getting that interview. And thank you for bringing me on to follow his lead.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. Greg's ats are in the description, so make sure to go follow him. Also, make sure to go follow CHGO. We really appreciate all your guys' support for both of our shows. But with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde, joined alongside Greg Braggs, and we'll see you guys next time.